Clap your hands and jump for joy, a game to be positive about. Finally, some levity in my video games. Well, levity in that I'm playing something good. Christ knows Jericho City has seen better days, what with the spider robot piss babies and psycho street thugs in power armor running around. So it's at least a more appealing destination than Magaluf. Well then, let's get into why this game knows what makes Dark Souls good, and how they threw some of that out to replace it with new ideas that actually work really fucking well. The port is pretty decent. There's a painful lack of graphics options, though we are given enough audio options, an FOV slider, and native 21:9 support with HUD scaling, though the lack of options is really compounded by the fact that this game runs about as smoothly as a river of cement. I ended up having to drop shadows and volumetric lighting a notch on a 1080 Ti at 3440x1440 just to try and keep it 60 FPS, though even 60 is not constant. If you own a G-Sync monitor, this game is one of those that's going to really feel like you've justified that investment. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to speak of, really. No standout visual effects or systems of presentation. If anything, it looks a touch dated, especially with the globally shoddy texture work. Though, much like the Dark Souls games this is inspired by, it's more than made up for by the lavishly detailed art direction and intense geometric complexity that gives that same glorious feeling of this is a world where you are going to need to figure out a way around no matter how awkward that is, rather than the typical this is a game world. For anyone who's played Dark Souls and Bloodborne in the past, this'll give a similar feeling. That was all rather waffly and boring, so on to pastures more entertaining. It's here in the gameplay that we start to see the first signs of major change beyond that which is purely aesthetic. By far the most cathartic is the limb system. In Dark Souls you bashed away until the enemy was ragdollized, either that or Thanos snapped in the case of the knights. Here, however, you select limbs to hack away at, break the armor off a limb and have a battery in the meter, more on that later, and you cut said limb off, gaining the relevant piece of armor or a weapon. It's a wonderfully unique and direct combat / skill-centered way of getting new equipment, compared to Dark Souls' grind like a whore on her fifth client approach. Therefore, getting a new piece of equipment is a targeted thing, celebrated by a slow-mo of your character tearing / cutting, and in one instance, flying kicking limbs off your enemies, before what's left sparks and burns. It works well. Mostly. The slip that drives the proverbial coat hanger into the eye socket of all of this is the blocking and parrying system. The thinking is you block with the left bumper, time it just right, you parry, and you get a free damage boosted shot. Yay! Though there's another level. The parry isn't based on when you block exactly. You get a radial wheel display on the screen showing where the next attack is coming from, and you flick the right stick in that direction while blocking at just the right time to parry. Fucked it, one of two things will now happen. You'll block, lose some health and reams of stamina, or it'll just count as a full-on hit, taking a chunk out of both health and stamina. What does this have to do with limbs? Well spotted, dear viewer. The issue is you need to select limbs using the right stick, the same stick as you parry with. So sometimes the game falls asleep and changes the selected limb as you parry. Fail to notice, you'll cut the wrong limb off, and the whole venture was a waste of your time. None of this is helped by the slight lag between the right stick flick and the actual parry either. That gripe aside, batteries. Unlike the rest of the world, the Surge 2 is going electric. I'll run this down quick. You charge batteries by getting hits or parrying in combat. You can then use those battery charges to fire off your health injector, read Estus Flask minus the animation, pre-charge the injector instead of using it right now as batteries decay, read filling your Estus Flask, or use the charge to execute the aforementioned limb removal. This all applies to the other injectables in the Surge 2 as well. Frankly, I love this system of consumables. No running back to a medbay, read bonfire, I said some original ideas, to refill a health MacGuffin like Wind Waker Link returning to his fucking grandma going through a techno phase. No running to that one vendor that sells the magical condom of plus 10 crab resistance for that one boss. It means you can keep on the go, keeping the flow going. Not to say that the game guts any reason outside level ups and upgrades to go back, banking your tech scrap, read souls, is advised. Using implants to gain bonuses and resistances, followed by the injectables for health buffs, damage buffs, and so on is a much smoother way of doing it. On to the last major change of the Souls formula to note. Med bays. As touched on before, it's here you upgrade, level up, bank, and use a quick break for a cheeky wank. Once again, streamlining was the drive behind the design. You level up, you get 2 points, and you get more core energy. Core energy is essentially vitality. It means you could equip more/better armor to each limb, or use more implants. Oh yeah, did I mention the armor system in this game is per limb based? Because it is, and it's fucking sweet. The points are just used for health, stamina, and battery efficiency. This may sound somewhat shallow, I grant you, though it's better than something so complicated that it ends up being about as balanced as the Scorched Contract, or global income equality. All of this, with the upgrade system that requires limb-specific materials that can even be broken down, provides a really unique and in some ways better approach to Soulsian combat that flows beautifully. Right then, on to the most important part. This is going to incorporate the story somewhat as being a Souls-like. The two are deeply intertwined, like a human centipede of fucking misery. This is the one place where the game is not comparable to its inspiration. Essentially, you're a guy living on a post-global warming Earth where capitalism has run unchecked. I'm not theming sequential reviews here, I swear. Flying to the shiny Jericho City to land a new job. While on the plane, some funky shit happens that involves a little girl, the plane crashes, you wake up in a prison infirmary during a breakout. After that, it's all predictable imagery of mankind's descent into inequality and disconnect from nature. Really well executed and quite subtle in places, mind. The artificial nature park and still operating nightclub of rich pricks overlooking the hell below, it's just that you can see it coming after the first frame of the opening cinematic. The real downgrade here, though, is that all-important part of the Dark Souls world. The most widely talked about online and yet so frequently misunderstood. The atmosphere. Dark Souls was able to keep that going, in large part by constantly showing you how far, how deep, and how all-consuming the rot is. Of course, every new environment was a hellscape, but always a fresh one. To the caves of poison, to an illusion city, and even regular villages. The Surge 2 limiting you to just light variations of the same bombed out techno city fails to provide the same necessary variety to constantly reaffirm the dread onto the prospective player. Dread brings me on to bosses. Most bosses take the form of powerful guys in and about the world, making it all a bit Sekiro. I'm at the midpoint of the game and have faced 3 main bosses. A literal piss baby, a nanite dog thing, and a general in a Titanfall Titan. In order, boring, easy, and about as balanced as the double-barrel shotgun in Modern Warfare, not in your favour. As for the Radiant bosses, I remember there was a dude at one point that was a hunter, though that was recent and I wasn't drowning my circulation in Monkey Shoulder at the time. There was the brother of the big piss baby in the crab mech. He's really a gimmick boss for playing with the new drone gun. Yeah, overall not that inspiring. The lack of reinforcing variety and lackluster some guy on the way to a thing bosses just doesn't imprint itself onto you anywhere near as deeply as Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Frankly, this game is pretty damn good. Yes, it struggles to keep up with its hotter friend thanks to its lackluster setting and bosses, but the brilliance of the game's own ideas coupled with an awesome armor and weapon acquisition system and exquisite level design means it's a close second rather than a distant third. Consider the fact too that the game is a decent PC port, unlike FromSoft games, and doesn't have a fucking awful excuse of an online system that serves as nothing more than a shit stain on a canvas. Hell, doesn't even have that toxic of a fan base yet. It doesn't even take the piss too badly with how it makes its money. Wait, why the fuck do I like Souls more again?